What up? Welcome to episode 41 of Swamp Creatures. The creatures are here, or one's missing right now.
What's up,
tonight we were joined. Hey there, Tim. Can you hear me?
See how bad that delay was? Yeah.
Yeah, I can see the delay. There we go.
Yeah.
And now we know why my connection is king.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, there's Rob there as well.
Do the host thing, man. You're supposed to ask what we're drinking, how we're what's new. You slacking here, dead air.
I wasn't sure what you were doing there, but anyways, we'll get the show on the road here with the Swamp Creatures. Tonight we're joined by Dennis Misigoy, who's running for Senate here in Florida against Marco Rubio.
Misigoy.
Misigoy. I hope did I pronounce that? Did I just mispronounce that?
No, you're good. You're good. The only thing I would nitpick ever with anyone is the hard G sound if they say joy instead of goy, but other than that, you're good.
I got you. And just so you know, we also pronounce GIF and not GIF.
So there's no joy for the goy. Got it.
I'm kidding. Anyway, Dennis, I'm not sure if you're partaking in our little festivities here tonight, but we have a little tradition here on this show where at the beginning of each show we go around and kind of see what we're all drinking. So I guess I will kick this thing off here tonight since I'm hosting. And I know that people keep on telling me to drink whiskey. It's not going to happen. And just to torture you all, I have a Jack Daniels glass. Yes, Tim, you know what I'm doing. You know what I'm doing. And you know people are going to be angry at me. Red wine in a Jack Daniels glass.
What are you doing, bro?
It's madness, Rob.
Jesus Christ.
This is what you get when you give me power.
This is pure anarchy. We love it.
It is. Anyway, Tim, what do you have?
Okay, so delay aside, I'm going to be drinking. What the hell am I drinking? This Maker's Mark. At the party, somebody left some Maker's Mark, so I'm going to try to. I don't know if I'm going to finish the bottle tonight. I'm going to try. Probably in the after show, I might. But anyway, cheers.
Cheers. I got two puppies. This is Appa, and this is Evie. And I'm drinking a glass of Bumbu, and then I'm going to switch to a beer.
I'm not going to lie. When I saw those dogs for a second, I almost just wanted to say, you can't substitute dogs for drinks.
But you can. Just have Rob post a photo of him with the puppies and get the link to the show. Yeah, we'll definitely get more views if we had puppies. Liver puppies? Libertarian puppies.
I like it.
Liver puppies and cats.
It's a good sell. Sell. Here's a good question, a good ice-breaking question for you, Dennis, since you're Libertarian candidate.
Are you drinking a club soda, or are you drinking like a cucumber water? What do you got there? You didn't even ask him.
Yeah. Water.
Well, he already said he wasn't drinking.
He told us, but he didn't tell the show. And that
Should there be a drinking age?
I don't mind necessarily there being a drinking age. What I would say, though, the one issue that I would have about any sort of thing relating to that is whatever the age is, it's got to be the age for everything. You're either an adult or you're not an adult. You're either enough of an adult to consume whatever you want, enough of an adult to enter into contracts, enough of an adult to sign up to spend a bunch of years killing strangers in other countries. You're old enough at that point to also, smoke or drink, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everything, it should be one age. Now, Obviously, a private business can still have its sort of thing, like with the rental car industry, where rental cars, they don't want to give it to anybody until they're 25, but that's a private decision. But in terms of what you're legally allowed to do, like I said, you're either an adult or you're not. And having someone be like half an adult, where you can do all this stuff and get into all this trouble and take out a loan that's going to have you in debt for 40 years, but you can't have a drink, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So.
That's a great answer. I think that's a very reasonable answer for someone going into office, I think. So
yeah.
I think what Dennis just mentioned there, I'm gonna keep because I don't care if I have a delay or not. I think what Dennis's answer to was consent, and I think that's I think libertarians get tripped up on this question so much about what the proper age for all these different things are, and it really just comes down to consent, whether or not you have the maturity level to do that. You can go to court before you're 18 and you can get emancipated from your parents if you can prove to the court that you are self-sustained, take care of yourself. So we don't really have to get tripped up on where we should draw the line. The idea is consent, and to be able to consent, you have to have a certain level of maturity and I don't know. Yeah, that's it.
Just look at Tim. He got emancipated. Now he's wearing muscle shirts. He looks great. So that's fine. Show us the side.
Tim, you got to bring back the long hair.
No, never again. Yeah. Never again. No.
If Dennis can rock the long hair, you got to rock the long hair, bro.
Too fucking hot. I work outside. Dennis is always in a suit, so he's clearly in an office all day.
I want to keep exploring this theoretical train because I've heard on drinking and libertarianism, since that's kind of our whole show. If there were no DUIs there, right, and we had private roads, would that be something you would support? Like private roads, the dangerous private roads where they're like, you can drink and drive, but it's dangerous.
Well, I mean, if you look at it from a certain standpoint, and again, this is, I want to preface this definitely by saying, this is not something that's on my agenda of like, hey, here's my policy priorities. Do not.
It's like top 20. It's not like in the top 10.
The normie disclaimer.
If you want to just sort of delve into kind of what would be the real principled answer on something like this, I mean, at the time that you're a person is driving unsafely, whether that's because of, alcohol consumption or whatnot, which again, how do you measure in terms of how much they've consumed? But at the same time, I mean, you guys know, what affects one person affects another, affects one person more or less than another. It's not another one size fits all.
Mitch can't handle whiskey. That's why he doesn't drink it.
How dare you, Tim?
So,
I love the delay because the reaction. Sorry.
So the in this case, and like I said, it's not a politically expedient answer to say something like it's not really until somebody gets into an accident that they've really violated someone's rights. But let me try to turn this around and think of an example I remember a few years ago. Somebody else pointing out it was a video that came out. I think it was like a dash cam on a police where they were stopping somebody for a DUI. And when they went in, then they're going to go give the guy a hard time, whatever, until they realized that the guy who was driving was another cop. And so what they did instead was they kind of helped him out. They got him home and just got him there safely instead of, giving him the biggest ticket that they could and really, kind of messing his life. And the point that the person I remember who posted it saying was this is like, it's not that we're like mad that they didn't throw the book at the police officer. It's that, we like the same kind of compassion for somebody else who maybe makes a bad judgment call, puts themselves in that kind of situation. There's certainly an eagerness to try to punish people who makes mistakes. And I think that that's certainly a mistake if you're behind the wheel and you're not able to control the vehicle. But in whatever sort of, obviously, if we really got to the pie in the sky situation of private roads, like a significant amount of the infrastructure being privatized, obviously it's up to the operator to kind of set the rules for people who are going to use it, and what kind of penalties they want to put, and what sort of contract or implied agreements are expected of the people using it. They have a financial interest, obviously, in not having big accidents on their road that are going to create all this traffic, and then there isn't flow, an ongoing flow of people through there, people using it, who are then going to be paying and generating the revenue for it. It creates an incentive not only for them to maybe put a restriction there, but also a restriction puts an incentive for how they handle it, for getting an accident out of the way quickly, dealing with it quickly, not having people sitting there for a couple hours or whatever, blocking a road off. So there's a lot of sort of interesting kind of, I guess, things that go into it. But obviously, if we were in the position where we could really have infrastructure privatized in that way, it would be something where certainly I would be fine with, again, them setting whatever rules that they're okay with it. Again, they may not want to be stopping people just because they're a tiny bit erratic, but there hasn't been an accident. Maybe they take the approach like what I mentioned with those cops or whatever, just to try to get people on and out of there. Because the people have a choice on which kind of roads they drive and who they belong to. Maybe they'll choose the operator who is a little kinder and is going to help them if they're in a bind, rather than throw the book at them and try to take all the money that they can out of them.
Take Ricky Bobby's Wild Highway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had another one for you.
I mean, I got a good one if you got it.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, this is one that I've actually encountered with quite a few different individuals, specifically those kind of America First type Republicans who are very, they might not necessarily be libertarian, but they genuinely would probably like us more on an ideological level when you stack someone like you up against Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
What would your argument be to someone like that to, vote for someone like you as compared to,
Dunk on Rubio
or the Democrat?
That's your mission.
Well,
Go.
Dunk on Rubio.
I would probably highlight some of the same things. I mean, the whole America First crowd were people who rejected Rubio and got behind Trump in the first place. So Rubio really kind of, I think, stinks of the establishment. For a guy who came in 2010 with the whole sort of Tea Party wave, he really is a guy who today really sort of just personifies that, I think, in a lot of ways in terms of the foreign policy. He may have the good sense to recognize that we shouldn't be putting a no-fly zone in Ukraine, but on the whole, he still kind of parrots this narrative in terms of the current conflict. He's a cheerleader for the U.S. getting involved in all sorts of things in the Middle East and endless spending over there. On his watch since he got elected, the national debt has more than doubled, and obviously that's not all him, but he certainly hasn't been really a force for fiscal responsibility in there. And there's not a principled, real position. Now, I don't know that necessarily I can make this argument. Well, I'll go with this anyway. One of the big things, and you guys, I don't know as much as you guys saw it in the 2020 election. I saw it especially living in Miami at the time, especially because one of the big things that they pushed across the state, and particularly with like the Latin communities and everything, was, Democrats, socialism, boom, 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 just going on and on with it. And Marco Rubio is a guy who will talk about that as well. But when you actually look at what are his proposals for economic policy and everything like that, he's not a free market guy. You look it up and you see these kind of funny terms, and he tries to rebrand these different ideas about central economic planning, and it's common good capitalism, or what was the other one? Corporate patriotism, I think was it, or patriotic corporatism. I don't, one way or the other. But
the Republicans selling out to having a centralized government, basically, like the conservatives selling out to it, right?
Yeah, it is. There's not a principal difference in terms of their view on the powers of government. But he's a guy who, if you look at what he's actually proposing economically, like if you recognize socialism is bad, well, if you recognize that that's bad, you recognize that free markets are good. And free markets have delivered, not just in the U.S., but in most countries where it has been largely where the nations have largely gone in that direction, or even where they just made a big tilt in that direction from having been heavily socialist, you've seen these tremendous gains in the wealth of the average people. And so we know that this works, but again, this is a guy who's instead he's blaming freedom and free markets on all of the ills of society, and thinking that we need a government that's going to sort of push a sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of push certain social values and everything else. And that maybe is a little bit dicey, because I think there's a lot of people who still sort of identify with that, who are on board with that sort of thing. But the tricky part for us is to make the point that that stuff doesn't really work, that freedom, we all sit here and talk about freedom. Those people will beat their chest about freedom as well, but we've got to be serious about it. And when it talks about economic freedom and other things, and just the nonsense that our government has been involved in for so long. And I think Rubio really personifies that. Another great one, just to make sure I don't miss it, is the Second Amendment stuff. Marco Rubio is the leading guy in the Senate sponsoring red flag laws to go nationwide every year or so. He's been putting something out there, and we know here in Florida that they passed it statewide. It was done by Republicans. He's a Republican, obviously pushing this. But if any of us are serious, and some of the and Florida is one of the states that has most used this sort of thing to go after gun owners, and we it just needs to be a recognition that these guys aren't on their side. These guys are on the side of government, keeping tabs on everyone, government having control and interfering in everyone's lives. All the stuff that came up during the, everything that we hear and talk about with the deep state. It's not a term I use a lot, but all those things that we've talked about, and certainly with folks who are following Trump, with all the stuff of different agencies spying on him and everybody else, all that stuff in terms of government largesse and these intelligence agencies and spying on everybody. Marco Rubio is one of those guys who is on board with that stuff every which way. He's one of the guys who, when stuff like that was exposed, like with Snowden, who was, calling him a traitor, saying he needs to be, taken down and all. So I think a lot of that, and I'm worried because my answer here is very meandering about it. It's not very focused, and it probably needs to be a little bit more. But I think a lot of those things, in terms of what the actual policies are, and what the things we actually value. Now, it takes a little bit more, but at the end of the day, Marco Rubio is not what people in that zone of thinking, what they actually want to get out of it. He'll pretend to be it, and unfortunately, that's typically what a lot of Republicans will do. But we got to kind of
the problem.
Exterior.
That's the problem, I think, is in trying to figure out how to shift the narrative from Republicans thinking they are the small government party, because that's what they want to be, but they're really not, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you look at it from our perspective.
Well, specifically how that came about, that whole question, why I asked that, was because I've met a lot of people who, even though they genuinely don't like Marco Rubio, they're so afraid of the Democrat, the idea of the Democrat, that they're just like, I don't know if I could vote Libertarian, even though I would really like your guy. Like,
yeah, no, I mean, and we've all heard that so many times whenever we try to talk to folks about this. But you've got to kind of make the comparison. One of the things I, try to point out in particular with a lot of the stuff going on, with all the craziness with the, in particular with military spending. I think a lot of folks have kind of just taken that for granted and really don't give it a second thought. But I mean, we're spending, and those of us who pay attention to this sort of thing know how just insane and disproportionate this. The U.S. spends more than the next 7 or 8 countries combined. Mm-hmm. The NDAA for last year was over $750 billion. So it was 760 some odd billion that they put on for this fiscal year. And I think I heard that Biden and company are trying to push over 800 billion. So over over 4/5 of a trillion in the next one. And let me tell you, both Marco Rubio and Val Demings voted for it. The last one, I have no doubt that they would vote for the next one, and they always vote for it. There's not a whole lot of difference in that area. I think also in that NDAA, at least when it went to the House, I think also went to the Senate, there was, guess what, red flag laws. Those ones specific for military because it's the National Defense Authorization Act. But just another example where the magnitude of difference is not quite what people imagine, what I think a lot of people expect, and what they're obviously told, and what everyone hears constantly about Republicans and Democrats and how, what's the word I'm looking for? How do they say? The hyper partisanship, and like there's such a big difference. But like, guys like us have been saying for a long time, Ron Paul going back.
I'm sorry, Dennis. My bad.
No, it's okay.
Guys, stop messing with the boxes.
I'm not fucking with the boxes, dude. To anyone who's listening to this, yeah, anyone who's listening to this, it's just like just switching Dennis everywhere and is just distracting all of us.
It's all Mitch's fault, that idiot.
We're so sorry we interrupted. This is one of the most important, if not the most important topics, foreign policy. So, foreign policy and military spending.
And it's something that's been going on and out of control and gone off the deep end, and particularly over the last 20 years. It's funny because quite literally we could cut our military spending in half, and we'd still be more than $100 billion. We'd still be spending more than $100 billion more than the next country after us, which would be China.
We still get our ass kicked in Afghanistan, though. Am I right?
Well, and that's also to show you the point that all that spending, again,
so wasteful, just wasteful.
It is wasteful. It is misguided, and again, also because the policy itself is so defective. And this is true in a variety of things. This is a good segue. In so many areas of government policy, because the underlying policy is so defective, it doesn't matter how much money you spend or the programs or who you put in charge, who's the general on the ground or who's this or that, what are the weapons you have. Even if the policy is defective, it doesn't matter. It's just not going to work. And we saw that in invading places like Afghanistan and pushing in this puppet government. It evaporated within a week after we left. You look at what is going on in Iraq, and not quite the same thing, but certainly extremely chaotic. The government that did ultimately take power after Saddam is more friendly to Iran than us, which is actually not that surprising. But again, these guys, the brain trust over there in Washington was convinced that, I don't know if it was Ahmed Chalabi or somebody else was going to become the guy in charge, and it was going to be this wonderful thing, and completely detached from reality, just like in all these other interventions and with many other policies. I'm sure there's at least some people who've pushed, for example, the war on drugs, who thought that by putting in some of these policies and really cracking down on things, that they were going to really stop drug use, and they were going to have this positive impact. And obviously it's been completely the opposite. Heck, go back to Prohibition days, man. Alcohol prohibition. I don't think they saw the mafia coming. I don't think they understood that bootlegging was coming, and it was just going to be an abject failure. So these guys always do this sort of thing. It's this sort of busybody mentality that dominates government because it attracts power, attracts the people who are there to misuse it.
Yeah.
And but every time it fails, and it's a massive waste of resources, destroys people's lives, innocent people's lives, get caught in the crossfire. And we got to kind of pick up the pieces. But we live in interesting times where they just keep on banging their head against the wall. All the rest of us have to feel the pain.
Yeah, it's crazy what kind of times we're living in. I'd like to think that as chaotic as it sounds, that we have the busybody people in charge of government who are like, I'm going to rule with an iron fist, and stuff like that. I think it's also as much just a part of the status quo because you don't spend the money, you don't get the money for the next year, so you're going to spend the money, and then it just becomes a part of the system, even down to your local level governments. I know here in Pensacola, our city government spends a lot of money just giving them to private businesses for like parking lots and stuff. It's like, you could spend your tax dollars better. We could spend our tax dollars better. A lot of cities have their city council meetings in the middle of the week and in the morning. Everyone else is working, man. That's just what they do. And
So-
so it permeates. It's not just the people who want to be powerful. It's also the people who just want to work in government and help out. And they don't know how to because they don't have anyone else besides Republicans or Democrats in their ear.
Yeah. No, yeah. There are people who get in. It was sort of an interesting phenomenon. I'm trying to think. I think I remember reading about this in one of Thomas Sowell's book, where he talks about, you have these sort of social movements that'll then create some kind of government, and you have the real activist people who want to make some kind of positive change, and they'll push for something to get created. But once it's created, and you have this government apparatus that deals with whatever, now the next sort of generation of people who are going to get into those positions aren't going to be those activists who are fighting long and hard to try to get some change for it. It's going to be bureaucrats who are career government guys and this sort of thing. So there's a lot to be said, and there's certainly people who come in with honest intentions and just get wrapped up in what's there. But even there, it's still people who look at the world from the perspective of saying, probably, we've got to do something, which is one of the worst ideas, the worst thoughts you can have, and certainly within government it is one of the absolute worst, because all the negatives that it disregards and just doesn't give any consideration towards. To what you mentioned about, sort of how budgets work, in particular how government budgets work. You got to spend all your money. If you don't spend your money, well, then it's going to get cut, and this sort of phenomena, that kind of thing in particular is it's again just another good reason why so many things shouldn't be done by government. There's just that sort of built-in inefficiency. Government, I will say I'm not an anarchist myself for a different sort of reason, but what government should do, or what the legitimate role I would say of government is, something exceptionally narrow, extremely narrow, uphold individual rights, life, liberty, property. Anything beyond that, you're really you're inevitably violating people's rights. You may even do it just for that, just to be able to maintain the apparatus for it, the taxation. But you want to keep that out of expanding into all these other areas. And you look at so many of the conflicts that we have around things like what you're describing, even just having government, building parking lots and stuff, or just getting into all this other sort of thing that really has nothing to do with the stuff I just mentioned. And it leads to all these problems, because then who gets the contract, which is the property they're going to eminent domain, and what's this and that. And it just exacerbates these problems or creates new problems. And one of the most important things we can do is to limit that everywhere we can. Some of those are very local things. Some of those are very high level things, when you talk about all these different federal agencies that meddle in every part of our life as well. So there's plenty of opportunities for us to do it, but it is always breaking through that wall and convincing other folks that it needs to happen. And some folks see it. They recognize that all these things are extremely corrupt, but like you said, they're kind of locked into the status quo, and they're afraid of taking a shot and trying to change things. And that's always one of these things. But I always try to make the point when I'm talking to people, we're 30 trillion in debt. Inflation is what, 8.5% now, I think is the last measurement I saw. I know I heard somebody tell me it was even higher than that, but I'll be modest on it, in terms of the last number I heard. We're talking record for I think pretty much all of our lifetimes. And, if not now, then when? That's one of those things I try to, get into people's heads. If not now, then when? What are we going to wait for? How much work? Not to mention being on the brink of nuclear war. Potentially, at least as close as we ever were during the actual Cold War. I'm at least old enough to have a bit of a memory of that. I remember when the Soviet Union was the big bad. I was a kid then, but still. And yet here we are now in this sort of thing with Russia because of what's going on in Ukraine. And I'm sure you guys know plenty with having heard the history there. I'm not the authority on it, but I've listened to the authorities on it, and it's insane.
Mhm.
It's insane. What the U.S. has done, and what you even hear. And I'll bring this one back around to our good friend, incumbent Senator Marco Rubio, because I remember seeing him tweeting out what was essentially the same thing that was being advocated by, you wouldn't guess it, Hillary Clinton, which was, hey, let's, if Russia's going to invade, well, let's at least make sure they have to face a long, protracted conflict with a heavily armed insurgency.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, what could go wrong? It's the Azov Battalion Nazis. We got to find some kind of extremist to give it. Excuse me, moderate rebels. No, that was ISIS.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, anytime the U.S. says we're funding moderate rebels, you should probably look and see who they actually are. And Scott Horton does a great job of identifying who they are, especially in the Middle East.
Yes. If anyone hasn't, I would implore every voter in the U.S. to please go and read enough already, because that is, I was already cynical and had a very negative view of the foreign policy establishment. But man, it's so much worse than I thought before I read it. So it is wild. And
even the audiobook. Yeah, I encourage the audiobook, because Scott actually narrates it himself, and Scott can already talk for days. And so I was just mowing my lawn listening to it, and then he would throw these numbers out and how many people were dying and what the U.S. government actively did, and I'd just be like, fuck, like just getting mad, and that's what we need people to do, is get kind of mad and upset at everything, right?
Absolutely. I'll tell you one of the things that really got at me, because I was, before becoming a libertarian, first time I voted was in 2000. Growing up, Cuban American in Miami, of course, I'm going to end up voting Republican. That's sort of the normal thing. I was an NPA, but still, and it was Bush that year. And obviously, we know what the Bush record is now. But it was interesting. He mentioned from, I think, some interview in the 90s, so obviously before actually running in that race and everything. But he was talking about his father running, and this whole idea of, well, in order to be, regarded as like a great president and to have like this really big legacy, you have to be a wartime president. And you really start to kind of put these things together, and you realize that, good heavens, these guys were after it from day one. And I'd already heard from other interviews or from other sources when people had talked about, I think it was mentioned in the very first meeting of the Bush cabinet. So this is before 9/11, obviously. This is in January of that year. The very first meeting, they were discussing, war in Iraq. So it wasn't for the fact that they were just dealing the hand they were dealt by the time they were living in. Bush campaigned on a humble foreign policy, sort of response to the Clinton stuff in the the former Yugoslavia and the Kosovo and everything else.
Clinton dropped the ball a lot. Yeah. Rwanda, we can talk about the Rwandan genocide, where we didn't do anything. So it's that's kind of the outlier,
Well, that's one of those examples of this sort of general thing about what really motivates. And this was something interesting I saw very recently. I've been meaning to post and I haven't, but it was an article I saw. Somebody else had linked to it on some Twitter thread I saw, but it was an article from, I think, 2017, or it was about a memo from 2017 when after Trump had got in, his first Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, after he got in, because he wasn't like a career, foreign policy guy. He was in business world or something. And so he basically had to be educated that we only really talk about human rights abuses when it's our enemy. If it's our ally, we really don't talk about those human rights abuses. Mm-hmm. And it's we kind of pick up on this. Those of us who pay attention to this sort of stuff, we kind of realize it already that, hey, yes, Saudi Arabia is really bad. And yet we're going to, bang the drum to say that we need to go in and go to war with this, that, or the other people for human rights abuses. And it's not to say that necessarily those human rights abuses don't exist, but we're literally helping these guys do all sorts of crazy stuff. And not just that, but even just stay in power in their own countries where they're incredibly repressive regimes. But also like what they've been doing in Yemen, obviously, for the better part of the last decade. We've actively supported it. And so that's why I think when people, when you hear U.S. officials, the foreign policy establishment go on about human rights abuses in another country, you really got to take it with a grain of salt. You really got to just think, yeah, that's not really what they're concerned about. Their concern is something else. And this is, even if it's true, and it may be true, and there's probably more human rights abuses than we realize. And again, it's not just the other countries. I mean, we can think about, at a bare minimum, some of the stuff that we've done in other places when you think about like Abu Ghraib and some of these other things. Mm-hmm. But
torture some folks. Yeah.
Why not? Or is it torture? Waterboarding and all that sort of thing.
Right.
It shouldn't even be. If you have to ask the question, I mean, really.
Enhanced interrogation technique.
Well, I just like how Obama could sweep shit under the rug like that, like where he just broke it to the American people. We're like, well, we got a little bit of trouble. We were torturing some folks, and Guantanamo Bay, and that's what it is.
Yeah,
and no one did anything about it.
Drink one for all the dead homies killed by big government. Okay, how about that?
Look,
give Dennis a chance to wet his whistle. We got to say hi to Josh. Josh showed up and no one even said anything. It's like he doesn't exist.
I didn't want to derail.
Nobody cares about him. I don't matter.
Hey, Josh.
It don't matter. Go back to whatever you're doing. Anyway, Josh, real quickly, what are you drinking?
Blue Moon.
Blue Moon.
Blue Moon used to be one of my favorite beers. Gotta have an orange, though. Gotta have an orange.
Agreed.
I got oranges in the fridge if I need them.
There you go. I bet you eat it peel and all. Just, He's like, nah, I'm insane.
Nope.
Yeah. So, I heard you mentioned Thomas Sowell somewhere in there. So,
yeah.
I might as well ask this then. Who would you say is the most influential libertarian in regards to has influenced you?
Influenced me the most is hands down going to be Ron Paul. That is where I went from kind of being, just kind of, I'll vote, but I don't really have very passionate feelings about politics. That's where I went from that to being, something like this. To being this was Ron Paul when I caught wind of, I don't remember where, like seeing a sign or something, like some random person holding up a Ron Paul sign somewhere. I think it might have been in a baseball game or something. But, then going and looking it up and seeing the stuff he was doing in the debates, and this back in 2007 before the 2008 primaries. That was the first politician I ever donated to. The only time I registered Republican was to go and vote for him in the 2012 primaries. And after he didn't win that time, I was just, bummed and a little bit dejected from it. And eventually that was really what set me on the path. Listening to him and getting that perspective back then. I voted Libertarian then in the general election, those two election cycles, even though I'm not really going to brag about voting for Bob Barr. But
Bob Barr was 2008, correct?
Yeah, Bob Barr was 2008.
Okay.
And so then 2012 was Gary Johnson's first run. And I think with Jim Gray as his running mate, slightly better than what came next. So 2016 came, and actually going up into 2016 was sort of when I really got active with the party. And that's really just kind of what set me there was, I had become really, these ideas had really taken hold with me, and I had this perspective, and I had an understanding of what was so wrong. But like I said, I kind of got just real down about it after that election. As time was getting closer and closer to the 2016 election cycle, I said, you know what, I need to get involved. And that's when I started getting involved with the LP, locally in Miami-Dade. I started going to the county affiliate meetings, and it was there then also. Before we did the first, as Operation First Step with the state, we were doing in Miami-Dade County. We called it Operation CDD, and there was a handful of us who ran, going for really local office, and I got elected. I was the one of us who ended up going opposed, so I was running against sort of an incumbent, but he was really an appointee. We hadn't actually had any of the seats come up for general election in the community development district where I lived. So that was an experience. And I think what we were talking about with some of the city councils, it was funny because when I started serving on the CDD board after I got elected, our meetings were at 11:30 in the morning on a weekday, like 20 miles or so outside of our district. If anyone's familiar with Miami-Dade, if you know where Cutler Bay is, a little bit south of Cutler Bay was where our neighborhood, our district was, and we were meeting in Doral. So
What?
Josh is dumbfounded right now because he knows the area.
That don't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. First, we were at the Lennar office because we hadn't switched off from them because they had developed the other homes that were in the neighborhood. But then we were at the district engineer's office or something. But it was up in Doral, and that went on for 2 years because for 2 years I had what I called the Ron Paul experience. Every contentious vote, I lost 1-4 or 1-3 if somebody didn't come to the meeting. Any motion I made, except for adjourning a meeting or approving meeting minutes, would die for lack of a second. So that was my first 2 years on that board.
Do you need a partner in crime? Is that what you're asking for? You need a partner in crime?
Exactly what he needs.
To help you with some votes?
So, I mean, this is the story. I mean, was that after the first 2 years, we had the 2018 as a midterm election. I got a couple other people to kind of step up and actually jump and get on the board. They weren't libertarians, but at least they were people I could work with. And at a bare minimum, after that, it was a night and day change. I was able to. We got the meetings moved to 7:30 in the evening. Within a little bit of the district. The district was purely residential, so there wasn't really a meeting space there. But we had it pretty close, and was at a time when regular working people could actually go there.
So did you see an increase when that happened?
A little bit.
Yeah.
People don't really want to be interested in politics. And truth be told, I mean, part of the whole libertarian thing is that they really shouldn't have to be. People should be free to live their lives and not really care what, this little special taxing district board is doing. They shouldn't really care, but sometimes they have to. They were at the time when we had the switchover when the midterm elections. We had there was a bunch of projects that were build this and that. They wanted to put a fence along the side where we had this nice open space to this little creek and this nice walkway that went up and down outside of the community. And there were people who lived right by there. They didn't want that, and nobody wanted to spend the money on it. We were able to stop that project. We were able to stop another project. There was one of the little things that they had kind of already been built, so we couldn't stop that one. But out of this slate of projects that these guys had approved in the previous majority, we were able to cut around 78%, I think, of the spending from that. So it was a good accomplishment there. They had another, even from the guys though that I brought up that kind of came on and helped me out. Even among those guys, they got kind of interested in building some stuff that people around there didn't want, and eventually, and it was a really cool thing in one of my last meetings there to actually be able to get that to not go through as well. So actually get people to realize that you're just causing trouble in the community, making people upset, and for no good reason. And cooler heads ultimately prevailed, and it ended up not happening. So, but people a lot of times don't know that stuff's happening until they really get affected by it, unfortunately. So, but we did see a little bit of an increase because it was accessible to people. It wasn't in the middle of the workday, because that is just, again, it's by design to be inaccessible. And the other folks on the board didn't care. The 3 of the other 4 people were retired, and the fourth one worked in the evening. So,
Huh.
there was and I said, look, I was working a regular job, and I was leaving from my job in the middle of the day once a month to go off to these meetings. Thankfully, my employers were always pretty chill about that. Nobody ever really gave me trouble, but it is one of these things where it's again, I'm willing to make the sacrifice to go and put myself over there to be there on behalf of the community. The folks there were pretty appreciative of what I was doing there, and the once we got a little bit of that turnover and we got the meeting schedule shifted, when there was stuff, people came in and they voiced their opinions when they wanted to, and so you had some people more than others, but when it was real difficult, obviously there was almost nobody there. It was a very, very rare thing for anybody else to show up to those other meetings, and there really wasn't space for it with where we were meeting to begin with. So, like I said, it's by design.
It's almost like if someone walks in, you're like, who the fuck are you? Get out. I'm your constituent. No, we move these meetings every week.
No. We know constituent.
No.
Just hit you with the Consuela coming in.
Speaking of Consuela, what's up, Rich? How you doing, man?
Good segue. Good one.
What's up, boys? What's up, Dennis?
Hey, buddy.
How you doing, brother?
How you doing?
Pretty good,
Mr.
man.
Consuela?
I just showed up to say fuck Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
It's little Marco, okay? Little
Marco,
Marco.
you gotta get right.
Lil Marco, the fud
I
ass
think-
rhino. Fuck that
I think
guy.
you need to adopt the nomenclature, Dennis. You need to go little Marco all the way. Or you need to come up with something better. You gotta come up with something better.
Give it a little bit.
Nobody can.
So while you were doing what libertarians do and rambling a lot, I went around and was looking up what Marco Rubio has been up to lately to try to get you some pointed questions on him. And the first thing I noticed is this guy is ragging on Val Demings. What, bitch? This guy is ragging on Val Demings for being a career politician. But if you look up his history, he graduated from college and immediately joined the city council and then immediately joined Congress. And then something else that I noticed is he doesn't seem to have a campaign website. So, like, he just knows that he's going to win no matter what. And so he doesn't even try to campaign. He just says Democrats bad and people elect this motherfucker. So anyway, I want to get your thoughts on that, but also what you know about, because I have never heard of this bill that he's promoting.
What you know about?
Yeah, what you know about burn pits healthcare, because apparently this is something that he's pushing. I don't know what that means.
Oh, burn.
So I'm vaguely familiar with this, and this is one of these, just in general, dealing with veterans.
Sorry to interrupt you. A little comedy thing here. Now it's not going to be funny. Burn pits healthcare for veterans. So what did you want to put veterans in a burn pit? What is it? I don't understand the language here.
When Dennis is done, I can speak on.
Sure.
So Josh may have a little more insight into the specific thing here, but burn pits. I'm trying to think. I don't remember quite all the details, but this is something going off in a couple of the fields of war that we had over the past 2 decades that have affected a lot of veterans health-wise, have had a lot of impact. So I think this, if memory serves me correctly, and I don't know how much other stuff is stuffed into this bill because you know how that goes, but obviously the marquee item is providing some additional resources for the healthcare veterans who are impacted by this. I heard somebody suggest to me, although I know it was, I think technically brain cancer, but I think somebody had suggested that this was part of what actually affected Biden's son, the older one, the one that passed away.
Biden.
Who had been out fighting in these wars over the last couple decades. So it is something I think that is a prevalent issue, or at least I should say prevalent, but an issue that's gotten a little bit more steam and a little bit more awareness in the past few years. And so in general, when it comes to veterans, obviously as libertarians, we're guys who are generally averse to increasing government spending on any sort of thing. But Veterans are sort of a different situation, obviously, because they're guys who've actually signed up. Obviously, the government on the other side of that made promises that they were going to provide certain things, including health care, to these guys as part of what they did. They did their part. We should be honoring that. And obviously, the one thing we definitely know is that it shouldn't be the government delivering health care. We should be providing them the resources to be able to go get that health care out in a free market that will compete for those dollars by providing them better care for what they need, and just not being difficult in terms of the way that medical payers can be with not approving claims and things of that nature. I think those are things, I guess, if you want to be specific about it, should be. So it's one of those things where I probably wouldn't be, although might be something where to look in terms of what else is in the bill. But it's a simple issue. But the one thing I would say, and the one definitely libertarian distinction, is that really we don't want to continue to depend on government for the healthcare, because you shouldn't even need an extra bill for a specific issue, like burn pits or whatever health issue that a veteran is encountering, and particularly that's related to their service. But even if it wasn't related to their service, they served, they should be able to get the treatment they deserve based on the service and the agreement that they made. So we shouldn't really need specific legislation for that. We should simply be able to, they can go out, get the health care they need, and if we made a commitment to pay for it, then we do that. Obviously, the VA as a delivery system doesn't tend to be very good. You can ask veterans about that; can answer better than I can. But I think I'm gonna cut that answer there, and I'm gonna let, if I know Josh wanted to chime in on it.
Yeah. So, okay. First off, I'm getting feed up in my headset, so ignore me. So yeah, for those who don't know about the overseas burn pits, so basically the U.S. military decided that all of their trash from like 2003 to like 2013, we're just gonna throw it in a big ass pit and burn it. Yes, I see you up there, Rob.
That's like that's like a South Park answer. Like, let's get back into the big gay pit. If you ever seen that one.
Yeah.
Just go throw the trash in the pit.
Everything got thrown in the pit. Everything got burned in the pit. And
so someone got,
when you're burning all this, no, like you're laughing, like it's like the really like Kamala Harris answer.
Yeah.
But like that's essentially what they did, and everything in there, the chemicals, all that shit that was burned, your soldiers inhaled it,
right,
and it creates negative health effects.
Mm-hmm.
So all these guys that were in charge of maintaining and running the burn pits, now they're coming out getting cancer, having medical issues. I mean, I can go on and on, but that's been a huge issue because it affected other members of the military that were on base that weren't necessarily part of those burn pits.
Mm.
So,
I mean,
you're having guys who were like, yeah, I was here to like flip burgers on the grill for 9 months to 18 months. And now I came home and I have fucking brain cancer.
Yeah.
Because I was inhaling all the bullshit from those burn pits.
It's more of the same. Honestly, and the government can't be held as accountable as a private actor could in these situations. Like, think about
held accountable,
right? And you have to ask them for permission to be held accountable too. So, like, also imagine this: government just starts in the early 1900s, like mid 1900s, start testing nuclear weapons in the United States. Smart enough to figure out how to make a fucking nuclear weapon, but not smart enough to figure out that wind patterns carry that shit everywhere, and then cancer rates just happen to go up.
That's the military for use, though.
You say that, but you know, there's a lot of shit we don't talk about, like the people that we tested a lot of these nuclear weapons on.
The Japanese. Are we talking about the
yeah.
Japanese?
No, not the fucking, not even just our own fucking soldiers,
my
bro.
bad, my bad.
Should've
Our
nuked
own
them
fucking
again.
soldiers. Like, no, I mean, like, look into some of that shit. Like, basically, they offered soldiers a lot of money to come and basically witness these nuclear explosions. Dude, I know this because my grandfather turned down the fucking money. He was smart enough to say no, and then all the other dudes came home with like hair missing and
They
shit.
didn't tell them. But what I'm saying is like I don't.
Yeah, they didn't tell them what they were getting into.
Yeah, like what I'm saying is some of them.
I'm not saying that.
Shit.
This is the 1940s and 50s.
Yeah.
They're like, just get the fuck out there, and we're gonna show everybody that this is safe, and you guys are gonna be part of this. And they would just like. It was kind of like catch-22.
No. That was the
thing.
thing.
Medal and promote you to major, and you're gonna be fucking awesome.
So in my grandfather's case, what they were offered was 3 months' pay for just going and doing this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was what they were offered.
You guys, you're getting all hyped up and it like hyperbolic for no reason. They were following the science, okay? She's wearing a mask. She's gonna be perfectly fine around those burn pits, okay? Just chill out, all right?
So, you know, to kind of bring it back around though, you know, it's there's nothing wrong with necessarily going and saying, well, we want to do a little bit more to help with people who are now affected by the burn pits, who are suffering the negative consequences of that. But again, let's just go back to it. Why did the burn pits exist, and why are they burning all this trash that's been there for so long? Because they've been there for so long. Why do we have soldiers out in these countries all across the world, and in particular in the hostile places, you know, where where we go to topple governments and regime change and et cetera, et cetera. Why are we there and there for so long? At the end of the day, it's the foreign policy that is supported by folks like Marco Rubio that created the conditions for this to happen. And yeah, you could say that maybe they should have dealt with trash another way. I don't think that they have an overabundance of places to put the trash. These people are kind of locked into what they have their area there is the base. They're trying to deal with it there. This is a terrible solution, but a better solution would be to not be there. But again, you can't get that solution until you change the policy. The policies it says is that the United States needs to control the globe and decide who runs each country and all that other good stuff that goes with it.
Yeah, no, it was Marco Rubio's votes that put them there in the first place, like you said. Let's be real. Would Marco Rubio have come up with a better solution, or would he have said, "Yeah, sure, burn pit. That sounds like a good idea"? They would have gone with the South Park answer. Let's be real. Washington people could go with the South Park fucking answer.
They're always going to go with the South Park answer.
Hey, wait, guys. This is retarded. We should go back to the gay pile.
Yep. Basically, in a nutshell, that's how it works.
That's what always happens. I love that episode. That's one of my favorite episodes.
With the goobacks?
Yeah, the goobacks. And also, I saw a meme. This is completely unrelated. I saw a meme this week. It was like Jada Pinkett Smith looks like one of the goobacks, and I was like, "Oh shit!"
Wow, damn, dude.
Anyway.
Sorry, Dennis.
Yeah, we're getting.
No worries. Yeah, keep it light.
Let me ask this, Dennis. So let's say hypothetically you're in a situation to vote to approve that type of funding, and let's say, once again, hypothetically, because we know there's all kinds of pork that's going to get stuffed into that bill and extra little incentives for everybody's congressional districts and shit. But let's say hypothetically it's a line item vote, and you're voting just on, hey, we want to put more money towards those people who, we essentially the military messed up in burn pits. Would you support it or would you not?
I think I would. It's something, like I said, where there's not a lot of areas where I would say that, but it's one of these things where I think you've legitimately made a commitment to somebody. They've done their part of it. They went out and served. if you want to think about it in terms of a contract or whatever, but we made a commitment, even beyond just the legalities of a contract, to say that, and we made that as a promise of when they came in, that they were going to be able to receive care, and we went out of our way to put them in this terrible situation. So it's the very least, I think, even if it wasn't me per se, because obviously it's not going to be me who's deciding to send these guys, and that's previous iteration of the government. But still, I think that I think there's a moral, need to try to do that, and maybe that strays a little bit from the pure libertarianism, but I think this sort of falls outside of that, because it is also somebody who was an employee of the government and went through this, and rather than have to be from a legal judgment, which I think would also be legitimate if they were to just be able to sue the government, but we shouldn't have to do that. We should just be able to decide, hey, these guys are in this situation because of stuff we put them through, we as the government, as an entity, and we should be able to deal with that. So as a line item, I think so, yeah.
And speaking personally, as someone who's put on the uniform and has a multitude of friends who still put on that uniform every day, I appreciate that answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer. We fucked them up. We should pay for it.
Exactly.
I think there's too many people who run as libertarian and think that they need to do everything by the libertarian book, when it's the whole living in Ancapistan in your head that that we've heard so much of. We can't vote like we're in Ancapistan, because we're not there
I don't
yet.
think,
We need the incrementalism. Like, people knock incrementalism like it's like it's something that's shitty, but we need it for now. And we need people that are going to make the decisions. Dennis, like you just said, dude, like you need to realize we put these guys in that situation, and unfortunately now we have a commitment to them. We owe it to them.
Yeah,
and
we're liable for that.
Right.
We did that to them. It wasn't like they just went out there like, all right, well, we're just going to burn shit in a trash pit and say, fuck it. We're going to, we're not going to do anything. Like, no, these guys were told by their commanders.
Backyard and burned a pile of shit.
Yeah, like
that's what we do,
were
bro.
Told by their commanders, burn it. It's safe. It's not going to hurt you. This is the quickest and most efficient way of getting rid of all this trash. Like, why are you arguing with us? And, to come to find out maybe 10, 15 years later, like, yeah, you're going to get brain cancer and you're going to get like cardiovascular and like respiratory issues and whatnot. Like, yeah, we as the American government are liable for those soldiers who were affected by this, and we should honor our commitment to take care of them.
Well, that's why I brought up the thing about what happened with my grandfather, because the way he understood it was the money was their way of basically signing away any sort of liability the government had for those nuclear tests. Later on in life, a lot of those guys tried to go after the government, and I guess the government denied like those tests having caused any of the cancer that they unfortunately a lot of those guys ended up getting.
I see.
Of course, they're going to deny that.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, well, of course.
I see the main issue here as the accountability for, let's call it, negligent actions on behalf of the government, right? And so I think I agree with you in that the government should be liable, and the system we have now is flawed in that you can't sue the government without the government's permission, and you can only sue them for a certain amount. Right, so yeah. I think that's the issue too, because we can't have the government fuck up, because they fuck up too much, and then once they fuck up, be like, we're gonna cut these huge ass checks and have the government be responsible for dishing it out. It's an answer. I think it works. It works in the system, but nothing's perfect. I guess nothing's perfect.
Well, and in those cases, when you have that really sort of real misbehavior or negligence, or just, let me not even say negligence, just disregard for human life and safety, we talk about, I guess there's two sides to that. One is, trying to help people, which is one thing. And, in terms of just being humane, again, like I said, let's take government out of it for a second. Let's say I was just a private employer and I asked my employee to do something and he got sick because he was doing something that I asked him to do. He could sue me to try to recoup, damages for his health. But honestly, if I'm a decent person, he really shouldn't have to sue me. I should say, gosh, I feel really terrible because this person has been has suffered so much because of a decision I made, and I pushed him to go along with. So
I get what you're saying, but like your policy limit's $1 million. They're like, I want $1 million. And you're like, I don't think I fucked you up $1 million. But so they're gonna sue your ass.
Come on, that leg isn't so bad.
But on the other side of this is the fact that because one of it is in terms of helping people, and the other side of it is about accountability. Okay, when the government screws up or the government does this kind of stuff and then does all kind of terrible things, and it's not limited to just the wartime stuff. We could talk a Tuskegee syphilis experiment and any other kind of stuff that we don't know about. And okay, the government pays some damages out and they help the people who they really screwed over. But were any of the people who made the decisions to do this ever really held accountable? Were any of these guys ever hung out to dry? Who paid for it? The taxpayer paid for it. It wasn't those guys who paid for it. Those guys kind of just went on, continued on with their careers, and retired off in the sunset. And and the rest of us paid for it. And it's the same thing when we see with law enforcement, with qualified immunity, and all these sort of things. You look at something particularly egregious like the Daniel Shaver case, where you watch the video of this guy get, begging on his hands and knees and getting shot because he loses the game, as Simon Says. And then what happens after that is even so much worse, is the fact that, okay, not only does the cop not get prosecuted and not really get sued and just kind of gets away with everything, then the footage comes out and people actually see what happened. But to top it all off, the guy gets reinstated and then he retires and collects a pension, a taxpayer expense, claiming PTSD. He's going through PTSD for killing this guy, begging for his life. And it's baffling. And, that's the sort of thing where it really puts into perspective that, on the one side, there's just not that accountability at all.
Yeah.
And they'll pay you some money. Maybe they'll pay you some money in a lot of these cases, but they're not. None of the people who made the decisions to do it are held accountable.
Right.
I think of the drone bombing last year, and that made a little bit more of the news as we were kind of doing the whole Afghanistan while it was going on. It was this drone strike that went after this guy, and then ended up killing, his like 9 other family members, 7 of them were kids, and the guy wasn't a terrorist. The guy was like a humanitarian aid worker, and again, who was it? Was it the CIA that investigated themselves and said, oh, there wasn't anything wrong with it.
Right.
We did everything by the book.
More than likely.
So nobody's going to be held accountable for it. So
yeah. I think that's why I lean towards saying like, I think cutting the check is a good thing, but I don't think it's like the best thing ever because you lose the accountability.
But there's also a certain amount of liability that you have. Like this, like what Dennis is talking about is no different than collateral murder that we all remember from like 2010, 2011, for those of us old enough. Everybody here remembers collateral murder?
That was the infamous WikiLeaks video of the helicopter, right? Yes, yes.
Yep, the Apache that had 30mm cannoned and Hellfire rocketed a bunch of journalists who they claimed were carrying AK-47s and shooting at them, but they were really like just cameras with big lenses.
It was camera equipment.
Yeah, and they lit up a fucking van with like 7 people in there, including children. Like that was what ultimately turned me to be like very staunchly anti-war, was watching collateral murder and realizing that like I'm putting on the uniform for the exact wrong reasons, and everything I'm being told is a fucking lie.
Yep. What I'm saying is, if you just cut a check for that instance and then let the people go away who made the call, who said, yeah, clear to fire, then what the fuck does that mean?
Well, no, I think that's the two things on it. Is one is you try to help the people who were the victims of this stuff,
Right. Yeah.
but on the other hand, you really do want to have some accountability. So I guess if I were to make maybe now from this conversation, let's say think about it this way. All right, yeah, let's have the bill for the burn pits to help out the veterans who are affected, but let's also put in there try and take a little action to hold the people accountable who from the top down made these decisions, told everybody what they were doing, who put this policy into place and kept it in place, and let's have a little accountability there, because if we don't have that, what do we got?
Yeah,
I
and
guess same.
Dude, but I mean, part of the issue is I think people are just so conditioned. Like at my job, if somebody fucks up and crashes a vehicle, okay, somebody's liable for that. And if that person can't pay for it and, it's got to go through insurance, this, that, or the third, somebody's going to get fired. You know what I mean? So the average person is conditioned to believing that that's the case. And I think the more, the internet has evolved in the last 15, 20 years, the more of those collateral murder videos that come out, the more that there's people like WikiLeaks and, Project Veritas and people that are actually putting out the information and letting the average person see it, the more I think people are getting radicalized, and there's more and more people, jumping on board with us saying, wow, there really is no accountability in government. They strike the check, but nobody ever gets fired. If anything, people are getting promoted over their blunders. They're getting transferred somewhere else to go fuck something else up. And I mean, it's crazy, but we live in a good day and age because people are finally starting to see it, that it's bullshit.
Yeah, this is one of the things that makes me hopeful for the future, for as much as people rightly point out how the LP as a whole has not really made the inroads that we would all wish we would have to this point already, is the fact that we do live in an age and a time when it's easier than ever to communicate with people and to get that kind of information out. I mean, just think about how many like this or other sort of crimes, even stuff that's on the street here within the country itself. Everybody's got a camera in their pocket today. Everybody's got a camera that connects to the internet, that can broadcast stuff everywhere. Everybody's got it basically at this point. And we've got stuff like this. Like, you guys can put this podcast together, and I can live stream every week, and all of us can do that. It's something that didn't exist, 30 years ago. I say 30 years ago, when Ron Paul was running as the LP nominee, and it's funny when you look at stuff from back then, but man, if you really think about it, how much more difficult it was at a time like that to be able to get your message out there. We're incredibly blessed this time to have the tools that we have. And I think it's true, the more and more people see it, it's just to getting people to see what we see, to get past that point where you're kind of like, they don't have a shot to thinking, my gosh, this is what's happening right now is just unacceptable. That morally you cannot no longer tolerate this stuff, and you've got to do something, even if you don't feel that you can do a whole lot of actions. Not everybody's gonna, do a podcast. Not everybody's gonna run for office. Not everybody's gonna do those things. But you've got to do. I hate that I'm repeating this phrase now. You got to do something. But I do think that on a personal level, on an individual level, people should feel, that you can't sit idly by while we just continue on down this path. Both, like I say, from the moral costs of the policies, like the foreign policy in particular, the interventionism, the pursuit of U.S. global hegemony, but also the stuff that we're feeling all individually as each one of us is seeing prices for the stuff we buy every week just skyrocketing. And so it's impacting everyone. And, at some point, again, there has to be a recognition that what's going on isn't working, hasn't been working. And we're in just this death spiral that if we don't change and get out of, we're just not going to get out of. Those guys aren't going to change. Let me spoiler alert for everybody who, I guess isn't already paying attention, doesn't already realize it. If our next U.S. senator is Marco Rubio or Val Demings, there's not really going to be a whole lot of change. I thought it was sort of funny seeing a Twitter post of hers. Florida's ready for a change. It's like, yeah, I agree, but you need a bigger change than just going from a red big spending warmonger to a blue big spending warmonger. I think we want a little bit bigger change than that, and certainly we do. And it's just a matter of connecting with more people and putting ourselves in a position where people can see it, because I think more and more people are realizing it, and hopefully, I think maybe Florida, in a unique way of seeing itself sort of apart from the other states and having a certain resistance. I think it's part of like what the allure of Trump was, even though I don't think Trump is a real anti-establishment figure. But I think the allure of that is for people in this state in particular, not wanting to just fall into line with the overall establishment and the system.
Mm-hmm.
People fancy themselves as anti-establishment. I get a laugh out of all the Democrats I see who still have like resistance tags in their bios and stuff, because at this point, what the hell are they resisting?
Right.
La resistance.
Resist.
So I
Resist. Not
It's
being
just the
part of
cringiest shit in the
duopoly.
world. Ah.
Have y'all ever dealt with on Twitter? I keep seeing them pop up every so often on somebody's post here, somebody's post there.
Elon Musk.
No, this guy is Brooklyn Dad Defiant or something like that, and I'm like, what the fuck are you defiant about? You're parroting every social media talking
He's
point.
defying this right here.
Yeah, no, you're
Defying that right there.
He's blue wave 2022 feminist. He's got it going on, bro.
He's not defying that the corporate media is like elbow deep up his ass and they've turned him into a fucking hand puppet.
Yeah.
Like what the hell is he so defiant about? It's nothing.
I looked him up just because. Look at
Defiant.
This is like
this is a brand at this point.
remove this in caucus.
If I could, I just want to say it fucking
That's
drives me
bad.
nuts how they say we are the resistance or whatever, as though this is freaking Star Wars and you're up against Darth Vader or some shit.
Right.
It's just
I'll give credit where credit's due, though. There's a lot of good, like, and I mean this in the least way possible, but there's a lot of decent lefties who are just like, I can't fucking stand the state. The duopoly is shit. I hate fucking the government, but they just want communism. Like, they're just economically illiterate. And like, I'd rather have that. I'd rather have a red-pilled like lefty over a blue-pilled libertarian any day.
Yeah, like Jimmy Dore. He's pretty socialist, but he's like red-pilled on the government. He's like, this government sucks, but he just wants universal health care. Russell Brand is another kind of lefty that's I really enjoy listening to Russell Brand a lot because it gives you a different perspective. Yeah, it gives you that hippy dippy bullshit feeling in your heart too, that you're like, oh yeah, I'm one.
Well, he's a thoughtful guy, and it's interesting. I remember him like kind of flipping an interview and like just giving people a hard time when he was like years and years ago. I think it was on MSNBC or something, but they like approached it really weird. He's like, shit, that and stuff like that, and it's just an interesting thought. But as you guys are mentioning, throwing off a couple names here like Jimmy Dore and Russell Brand, and I think this is also sort of the thing with not quite as much maybe as a lefty, but still, I mean, he endorsed Bernie, was Joe Rogan, and some of these guys, and the appeal. What really the appeal with these guys is they're not lying to you. They're at least being honest with you, even if they're wrong about something, or I don't agree with them, or they're not the expert. It seems like they're being honest, which is the thing that people aren't getting from the mainstream media, where you have these big production departments and the fact checkers and everything else. But there's agendas, and I forget who I was having the conversation with a while back, but you could be the smartest guy in the world, or you could be the absolute complete expert in your field, know more than anybody else. But if you've got an agenda that you're trying to push when you're talking to me, and I know about it, what difference does it make how your expertise, if you're not actually being honest with me and you're just trying to push an agenda versus that? And I think that makes a lot of difference. And people who are honest and people who are honest and talking about it, you can't help but see through this nonsense of, in particularly when it comes to the foreign policy, you know, and just all this wild stuff and the dishonesty and, you know, with the media cover-ups, you think about the stuff like with the Hunter laptop, all these kind of just wild stuff that goes on. And
what's amazing here with that, I mean, the way they're walking it back right now is just absolutely fucking astonishing. You know, everybody that said this isn't even a story, this isn't worth even looking at, this is Russian disinformation, they're all walking it back right now because it seems like something might happen.
Yeah, it's the same
they're
old
still
trick.
sweeping it under the rug. They're not making.
Yeah, Russia's going to nuke
it.
Ukraine.
Yeah, it's the same old trick. It's like, look over here.
Well, you know, it's always the thing where like
That's what they
the
do.
big accusation is the headline. It's the bold-faced headline and the retraction. Oh, yeah, we were actually lying to you. That's on the back page. That's buried tiny little thing over here. Oh, sorry, we were actually lying, and this is actually the truth. You know, it's always gonna do it that way. And it's again, in as much as people start to kind of wake up to that. And again, like I said, I'm hopeful when, you know, the biggest media platform right now is Rogan, you know, blowing all these other guys out of the water as they're, you know, all like the standard cable news and everything else. It gives me hope for the fact that, you know, there's more and more people who are just kind of disengaging from this stuff and recognizing that, you know, this is not you know, let's say to maybe not to as conscious a degree to say that there's an agenda, but I'm not getting honesty here. You know, I'm not getting anything that's worth my time to listen to because they're not listening to it. So the more that happens and the more that people are picking up their information, engaging in all these other sort of avenues to get their information, the more hope I have for the future. And certainly the whole Elon Musk, if it goes through with Twitter, that'll be
There was news today that it's someone put together a lot more money to buy 10% of Twitter.
So there's quite a few things going on right now, just as far as the situation there, and this is what I have gathered. Vanguard Financial, whatever they're called. For one, their name is Vanguard, which just sounds evil.
It does. That sounds super evil.
BlackRock, Vanguard, Davos, they all sound evil. But Vanguard is the one that bought the 10%. But there was also that thing with the Saudi prince who said that Twitter is worth more than that much, which if you read between the lines, I think he's basically saying it's worth more to influence the narrative than it is to sell it. But so basically you have those things. And from what I understand is if they turn down Elon's deal without consulting the shareholders, that leaves them open to a lawsuit. So there's a lot of moving pieces going on in this whole thing. Frankly, it's my favorite new Ayn Rand novel.
I want to go back to us talking about our favorite people from the left real quick. And I think there's just a little quick note on it. All of them are comedians, ultimate truth tellers, comedians and podcasters alike. Ultimate truth tellers of our time, defeating this old form of like getting a talking head on the TV with a specific agenda like you're talking about. So, and we have a podcaster and comedian of our own on the Libertarian side. So Dave Smith 2024. That's what I said.
We got a few.
Yeah, we have a few comedian podcasts, but I mean, like, you know,
if Adam Nutter is listening, he's going to be so mad at you.
Adam
he's a
Nutter
fan comedian.
2028? Question mark?
yeah.
Nutter 28. You heard it here first, folks.
Nutter bust.
Adam Nutter running for president 2028. I'm running as VP too. We're gonna do this.
Oh my god.
Nutter bust.
Yeah.
Nutter bust. I like it. That's the campaign slogan right there.
Yep.
And this is where it all started.
That's a good one. Yeah,
Sorry, Adam.
he's got to run now.
Yeah, we just nominated you for president, bud. You're fucked now. Sorry. You're doing this. Too bad. We're gonna campaign. We're gonna whip delegates for you. You're beat. You're gonna have to run for president.
Can you imagine like a Ron Paul sized crowd, or like a Trump or like Bernie sized crowd going nut or bust, nut or bust? That would just be amazing.
That just
Dennis,
reminds me.
this is not helping my campaign at all, Rob.
That just reminds me of that joke.
On this whole podcast isn't helping anything if you want to do it politically. I don't know why Dennis is here either. So like this isn't doing anything for
I
everybody.
love you, Dennis. Thank you for coming. Don't listen to Rob. He doesn't.
Look,
know what he's talking about.
we went over this. The reason why he's here is like Welty said, and we know Welty's helping with the campaign. Welty said, "Go on these libertarian podcasts. No one listens to him anyway. So what the fuck? Get some speaking time."
Yeah. We got like a whole one person watching the show right now on YouTube, and that's me. So
3 in total.
There you go.
And Welty came on my podcast, not this podcast, but my podcast.
And
back
no
in
one
the day,
cares
so-
about you.
What does that say about you?
I'm not consistent with that one, you guys. I give enough like my time to work and shit right now, so fuck
Alright.
you.
real quick, I have to ask Dennis the most important campaign question that he may have to face in his entire race.
Oh fuck.
Oh Lord.
And this may look, Dennis, this may completely affect whether you potentially could win or not. So I want you to understand what you're about to answer is very detrimental to your campaign.
Oh,
But I
God.
need to know.
I already know what it is, and I hate it. Go.
I know what this is.
Y'all know what it is.
I fucking know what this is.
What?
Me and
Dennis,
Tim
I
both
need to
know.
know. I need
He's
to
about
know.
to threaten one of those chicks.
Before
That's
Tim
not it,
kills
right,
me
Robert?
virtually, I have to know, Dennis, is a hot dog a sandwich or not?
Oh, you son of a bitch! You son of a bitch!
You know, why not? Why not, man? Let's go for it.
Yeah! That's what I'm talking about. It's
Wait.
meat
What was
on a
your answer?
fucking
What
piece
is
of
your
bread.
go? What
It's
is
a
go
sandwich.
for it? Are you saying it's a sandwich?
Sure. No, I remember seeing like the nice chart of all like the the strict definition versus I can't remember exactly where hot dog was, but I know hot dog was somewhere off of being we're
You got my whole house's vote. If we can vote for you, if we're in your race, everybody in this house is voting for you. Even the
These
baby is
damn
not eligible to
postmodernists.
vote.
let a lost one.
We're gonna register him as a Democrat. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
These damn postmodernists thinking that a hot dog is a sandwich,
It is a
breaking down the
sandwich.
structure
Look,
of that
this
which
the
is a
most funny
sandwich,
question.
taking away that which brings meaning into what is
Look, we can get into
sandwichness.
pineapple on pizza too. I mean, we can completely divide the whole house here.
Hey, at least that one I kind of get.
I say no. I say no on pineapple on pizza, but like I will eat it.
Look, we've had this
Rob.
debate. It's Dennis's turn.
Yeah, I don't care
No
about
pineapple on
your
pizza?
opinion. I need to know Dennis's opinion on the pineapple on pizza.
I'm not much for pineapple anyway, so I definitely don't do pineapple on pizza.
Pineapple.
All
All
there
right,
you
I
go.
respect
Good
that.
enough to know.
I respect.
Oh, you respected it? Oh, fuck you. I think you're in the
Fuck
tank for
you.
Dennis no matter what he says.
Okay.
Maybe I'm
How much is he paying you?
What's it to you, Tim?
It's a chicken nuggets worth. Oh, no, go ahead.
I want to hammer you with this one. Ass or titties?
Oh my god.
I knew you were
Damn it,
gonna pull
Rob.
that.
Jesus.
I thought Josh was gonna do that.
No, I'm way less abrasive than this.
Josh
But
is
now I
above
need-
such things.
Huh? Are we waiting on his answer? Because we don't have to make him answer this.
Wait, you don't have to. You don't
I
have
wouldn't
to.
answer this. I wouldn't even like. This isn't
Here.
even worth your time, Dennis.
You asked if a hot
Rob,
dog
please
was a
play something
sandwich.
from the soundboard.
No, because
Where's
no,
the
I
wet
don't.
fart noise? That's what this is.
No,
Yeah.
no. I think it's I think it's an important question. Obviously, we know Trump's a pussy guy, so that's different.
He bought a night with Stormy Daniels allegedly.
Oh, okay. Well, Stormy's
That
just
wasn't
got
even
it.
on the list.
Well, that's what he grab him.
I
you know,
wouldn't.
he said,
I
yeah.
wouldn't spend that much on Stormy. I don't know what he was thinking.
No.
Diana,
How
Diana's
much?
right.
Did
He has
they
an
ever
answer.
actually bring out a price?
I don't want to know.
I don't know.
Like-
We're done.
All right.
Like,
Hey,
there's
hold
so
up.
many better
Did-
questions to ask.
Didn't she end up paying
Like-
him?
I think so. But she got to pay the
Oh,
judgment.
Oh, yes.
That's true,
Yeah,
actually.
that's right.
Yeah, that's
right.
true.
Yes.
Actually, that is.
Yes,
She
Uh,
paid
Boss.
me. She paid
So-
me.
So now that I'm done talking about Trump and Stormy for a quick minute, Dennis,
Hot dogs and sandwiches, bro.
we already established that. Tim, thank you for reminding us though that a hot dog is indeed a sandwich.
No, I was saying hot dogs and sandwiches. But anyway, ask him your serious question. Get us back on track.
Yes, I do. Thank you. So, you're running for Senate. You're running against Rubio. You're running against technically Val Demings as well, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
I mean, she's technically got to win the primary. I guess even Rubio would. I don't know if anyone else is still on the Republican side, but that's the expectation is that it'll be those two as the Republican and Democrat. Yeah.
Okay. So we got Rubio. We got Val. I've seen you all over social media beating up on Val. We already know that you're not a fan of Rubio because you beat up on Rubio too on social media. So let me ask this. Who do you find to be the easiest to find opposition to? Is it Val or is it Rubio? Because as a libertarian sometimes, we find a lot more fault with the GOP and the Republican side than we do the Dems sometimes. So I want to hear who's worse to watch, Rubio or Val Demings?
Which one's
What do you mean
worse?
worth to watch? Yeah, what do you mean?
Like, what I mean is like,
Cringy?
who do you like? Who, not cringy, but like, who just like has the worst takes most often that you can just beat back? Like,
Val
it makes
Demings.
it too easy for you sometimes. Maybe
You know,
that's a better question.
I think the funny thing with Val Demings is just that it's so hollow. Like most of what she puts out there is like, well, here's my story and here's this and that, and it's very, I mean, to kind of sort of put it in perspective another way. It's been a little while since I've looked, but anytime I've looked at her website, there's literally no policy there. There's a donation thing. There's, here's some of my story and this and that and help out and this and whatever. There's no policy. There's not here I'm going to do this or here's what I'm about. And it was one of the things that gosh, what was it? That Rubio hit her on right when she was first getting into the race, was the fact that, in the last legislative section, in the last session of Congress, she literally voted 100% of the time with Nancy Pelosi. That doesn't seem like independent thought. But, and the stuff that she does put out there, obviously, tends to be a little bit more on the real simplistic side of certain things. Some of it's, it's harder in particular with the kind of social media format of like Twitter to, beat on, hey, insulin shouldn't be so expensive, let's cap it. And, I can point out the fact that, obviously it's economically illiterate to think we should have government putting price caps on anything. But that's a little harder thing to kind of get on. But, I tend to see quite a bit. It's just whatever's coming out at the time in terms of which one is the easier to hit or just the worst presented in that way. You know, I'm trying to think, man. I'm trying to come back to the original question, but which is worse? Watch. You know, I don't know. I make a conscious effort not to pick one out of these two, because you know it's this whole thing when they ask you, you know, if you had to pick one, gun to your head, and all that sort of thing between Republicans and Democrats, and that's always sort of the thing. And I kind of both consciously and subconsciously really turn away from that. So I'm trying to think if I'm not giving a good answer, but
it's fine. You don't have to give a good answer, because I'm going to segue this into a good discussion that you can ramble about. So you're making a good point there, that you can't choose between Republicans and Democrats. You feel them, they're both inadequate, and you want to have a libertarian on the ballot. Okay, that's a philosophical thing for you. That's something that you believe in. Realistically, let's look at it. It's going to be a Republican or a Democrat that's likely to win this race. And most people are not going to care what Marco Rubio says if the opposition is a Democrat. They're going to vote for Marco Rubio because he's a Republican. You can call him a rhino. You can say he's an establishment guy. You can say whatever you want. People are going to vote for him because he's the primary candidate. He's the guy that's going to win the Republican primary. So he's the prime opposition.
Yeah.
Why run as a libertarian for the U.S. Senate when you could very easily, in my opinion, the Republican Party could easily run somebody against Marco. If he had strong opposition, somebody could take this motherfucker out. I've been to Republican meetings, and every time the meeting is interrupted because they hate Marco that much. They're ready for somebody else. So why waste your time running as a libertarian for U.S. Senate when you could run as a Republican? Some people don't like me framing the question. Yes. Some people won't like me framing the question that way, but that's fine.
Because I'm sure Tim is playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I like having a libertarian on the ballot, especially if you're going to speak libertarian principles and values, and I think that there is value in doing that. But I also, me and Dennis have talked about this when I interviewed him. I also don't think it's a winnable race, and so I don't personally, I wouldn't do it. But you know, there's value in doing it. So back to my question: why wait? I won't say waste your time. Why are you running as a libertarian? Why aren't you primarying the easy target?
I mean, I'm less convinced that it would be an easy target for doing that. I think if you're coming at it from an anti-establishment perspective, certainly there might be a few more welcoming folks welcoming in you in terms of resources. But even, let's say, perfect scenario. Let's say even better. Let's say I could run as a Republican and get elected. Now, we would say I could do a lot of great things, and I would agree with that. And I think I'm more principled in a sense than any of, even the good Republicans that we have, off in public office. Okay, fine. But here's at least one of the issues I have with some of the libertarian leaning Republicans that are out there in the GOP and doing that, is that it reinforces that sort of narrative that exists right now, where the Republican Party is able to sell themselves as we are the party of limited government and we are the party of individual freedom, in part because they do have or have had some guys. I mean, I think all of us have seen it, and I recall getting into at least a little Twitter back and forth a while back, when I saw this guy, Tho Bishop, talking about, hey, do you want to be part of the party of Ron Paul, or you want to be part of the party of Nick Sarwark? And I'm like, well, come on, man. When I think about that and just in terms of where the parties are, there's a couple thoughts in particular. One is that, this is kind of going off on that tangent, but, what are the values of any of the parties at this point? And also, how do we actually get to where we need to be in this country and actually get to change? Now, it's an astronomical long shot for any one of us to win. And I would say, look, even if every libertarian running for federal office were to win in the next election, change would come slow. It would be the equivalent of like what I described when I was on this on the CDD board, where I spent 2 years where I couldn't do anything, at least. It would be something like that. But the question is, how do we ever break out of this cycle if we're never putting something out there, we never actually win. It's not the only path I think forward is going to be to break the duopoly control on power. And yeah, my odds of doing that are very, 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 very small. I'm not naive about that fact. But at the same time, I know exactly what will happen if I do. If none of us try, if nobody runs, I know exactly what happens. And what happens is that we just continue on down the same path. Now you say, well, if I could run as a Republican, okay, I would run as a Republican. If I could get elected as a Republican, would there be some value? I mean, I have some real internal issues with the idea of identifying with Republicans. One of the things that actually came up after the discussion I was just referencing, where I had that little back and forth, like a day or two after we, kind of amicably said, we're going to stop arguing about this, was when the U.S. House voted last year to repeal the authorization to use military force in Iraq to stop Saddam Hussein from getting weapons of mass destruction. 3/4 of the Republicans in the U.S. House voted against that. So they wanted to make sure that we're still have the authorization to go to war in Iraq to stop Saddam Hussein from getting weapons of mass destruction. They think that's still valid in 2021 at least, and that's just indicative of how wide the gulf is. So, and to be honest, to go run in a Republican primary, it would be a thing where also you would imagine that you'd have to tone back some of these things of being pro drug decriminalization, to be in support of certain of these policies, and to not really support the Republican mainstream on it. A lot of us can look back at Ron Paul, serving so many times in Congress, but he was in really a unique position in terms of where he was with his district. Massey just voted against the marijuana legalization. I know it was because about other stuff that came with it, but still, the question is, we were talking about incrementalism a little earlier. Is regulation still slightly less bad than prohibition? Certainly at the federal level, but again, this one's kind of rambling on again, I guess. But
well, so no, you're fine, man. I'm teasing when I say that. It's okay. You're here. You're allowed to talk. You just brought up something though. Massey voted against that decriminalization bill. If you were a member of Congress, you'd have a seat at that table. So would you have voted in the same way, or would you have voted for it?
I would have voted for it, and you'd have to really have like an over preponderance of things to think where you're really going to have more people's lives upended potentially by these laws than would be by what's already in place. Because again, we're not, our default, our starting point is not Ancapistan. It is not a blank slate. It is the current situation of the United States here and now in 2022. So this is what we got to take and work with. And so if we get at least a step further away, and this was actually funny now that we're talking about this, because Rubio actually put out a statement, or I guess it was in an interview or something, but when he was asked about this coming legislation, he said one of the reasons he gave for not supporting marijuana decriminalization or legalization was that black market weed is laced with fentanyl, which is so absurd as a rationale. Because by keeping it illegal, you ensure that people have to get it on the black market. So, there's a real lack of understanding of what drug prohibition actually means. But that kind of an answer was just something I just couldn't help but shake my head at. And actually, I think Reason had an article that said, just if these are the kind of arguments that he's got for it, it's better just to not say anything. But it is it's wild, man. And and another one of the arguments was that well, when by legalizing it, it's sort of like a stamp of approval, and he thinks, well, it's harmful. And this actually gets to something where and the LPF put out well, it was working with Christina. She had asked me about putting something together with you guys putting out for a video, and it got posted on at least on the LPF Twitter. I don't know if anywhere else, but a little conversation. And part of my angle with that, as you guys know, me not being neither a drinker nor a whole lot of other things, I do not partake in all these sorts of things. However, my perspective on it is quite a bit different, which is especially that we never really should be equating something being legal with sort of being sanctioned, or the idea that the only things which are legal are things which are good. What is and should always be legal and should be protected, and where people should be able to act freely, is where people are what's the word I'm looking for? Not violating anyone else's rights. If you're not violating anyone else's rights, your rights should be secure to do whatever you want, even if that thing is not good. And that's the thing that we have, and the thing that we deal with. And it's the problem that we have this, and this is, again, what permeates through the Republican and Democrat Party, what defines their way of thinking. And what I always try to point out to people is the real distinction between them and libertarians is that they believe they have a mentality about government that basically goes back to like the ancient times and mandate of heaven, that government is by its inherent nature all powerful, and can do all these things. And then it's just a question of, well, what are the good things that we should allow people to do if we're going to give people permission to do? And that's obviously we have a little bit of a different perspective. That's not at all the role of government, and not what it should be. And so, but it's that sort of disconnect where, because it's that sort of mentality, they view an inherent connection between saying we shouldn't be arresting people for this to saying that this is good. And that's also why I don't going to say I object to it, but I really take a different tact from other people. There's other people in the liberty movement who are very much about, well, when they talk about marijuana or cannabis decriminalization, they talk about, well, the health benefits and this and that. And that's fine. I let them take that angle. I'm not going to say something negative about it. I'm certainly not going to argue it. I'm not an expert in the field to be able to say that that's not true, or that this and that. But whether something is criminalized or decriminalized should have nothing to do with whether you think it's good. It has to do with whether or not is somebody having it or possessing or doing this action, and the action in this case is possession or consumption. Does that action violate someone else's rights? And if it doesn't, it should be a no-brainer. It's the same thing like similarly when people talk about sex work. I have a very sort of what you might say conservative sort of personal values and everything else. But that doesn't mean I want to throw people in prison for something. But I'm not going to be one of these guys who is going to go out and say, well, we should normalize this. And no, you don't have to normalize it. I just don't want to throw people in jail for it. I don't want to ruin people's lives. If somebody is on this track, and I think maybe it might be something bad for them, but if they're doing something bad, okay, it's bad and there's some natural inherent negative consequences to it. But then they want to be able to decide to change. What happens when they decide they want to try to change? What's it going to be? Are they going to be able to, at that point, transition over into finding a regular job and putting their life back together? Or are they going to be saddled with a criminal record that makes it impossible for them to do that? And then they get stuck, and then they really get stuck into this cycle where they don't have better alternatives. It doesn't even make sense, because if you want people to get out of this, the last thing you want to do is throw them in prison. Clearly, after decades and decades, if not in some of these cases, half a century of this kind of policy, you should figure out that this stuff doesn't work, that the deterrents aren't working. And at some point reevaluate the policy. You don't need to, and that doesn't have an impact on our social values. We can maintain the same values and perspectives on these things, but again, what are you going to throw people in prison for when we've got God knows how many rape kits that don't even get tested, and all these other sort of cases that never get prosecuted, actual violent crimes, and we're putting people into prison and destroying their lives over acts that didn't violate anyone else's rights. It doesn't make any sense, and but unfortunately, it's one of these things that persists because it's something that the two-party establishment can sell.
All right. We're coming up on the 2-hour mark, so we got to get some final questions in here and let everybody do their thing. I've got some rapid fire for you, but I'm willing to hold that off for other questions. No? None of y'all want it?
Start shooting.
All right, Dennis. This is going to be real difficult, okay? You got to keep your answers short and sweet because there's 10 of them. I'm going to throw at you. No, let me do this. Let's put you on the big screen. Let's put you. Yeah, look at Rob. There you go. All right. I'm gonna put. No, I'm not asking that question, Rich. We're not doing the Buck Angel Bailey J question.
Oh, come on.
No.
Let's go.
So
No. I just found this. I just wondered if there is a survey out that tells you what the top 10 issues for voters are. And so if you don't have a good answer to these questions, you're fucking doing it wrong. So
right.
I'm going to throw you 10 subjects. You give me 10 as quick as you can answers. What matters most to most voters in 2022 midterm elections? Number 1, economy.
Yeah. Economy,
How do you
it's
fix
pretty
it?
obvious.
Yeah.
Give people some alternatives. For starters, stop doing all the things that are creating the problems. That means you rein in the spending, you stop inflating the currency, although some of that is still kind of in progress. So you allow people to get alternatives. You certainly don't go sanctioning other countries that we depend on for trade for goods to further exacerbate the problems. And you eliminate restrictions that are currently, you do everything you can to eliminate the policies that are restricting productive economic activities. There's a slightly longer quote from Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, but it basically says it's always in the best interest of people to buy whatever they want from whoever sells it cheapest. And we got to get out of the way of preventing that. And there's a lot of ways we do that, but that's got to be the goal. Allow people to get what they need at the cheapest prices possible.
All right. Watch yourself there. That was only number 1. We got 9 more to go. Number 2, COVID.
Get rid of the restrictions. There's no justification for it. Certainly from the federal level, which I'm going to be running for, there's no legal authority to do it. So, and really we should also start, if we really want to look at it, since the lab leak is becoming more and more likely, we really should start reevaluating all these sort of researches that we're funding, in particular, the gain of function and whatnot. But the restrictions and the spending that was meant to sort of deal with the fallout of it, all that needs to go. And if you do think that in any other emergency we need to do this kind of emergency spending, you got to find other places to cut.
All right. Number
Arrest
3,
Fauci.
healthcare. What? Number 3 is not arrest Fauci. It's healthcare. Slightly related though.
Again, we've got to eliminate the barriers that exist that drive up cost. If we don't understand how things got to the way that they are, we certainly can't solve it. And actually, something I've been meaning to do a little more posting and talking about has been, free market solutions to it before this. Actually, Florida was the sort of birthplace in the U.S. of mutual aid societies, something that existed, and in particular was among immigrants. In the Tampa area originally, like the whole Ybor City kind of region, was the mutual aid, and the fact that we can do this stuff without government agencies to provide for those instances where people say that someone is in a little more worse situation or would fall through the cracks rather than just having to pay for themselves out of pocket. There are alternative solutions, but we've got to start breaking down the barriers, and in particular, in terms of what has driven up the cost. Again, the regulatory burdens, when we talk about new medications, new treatments, and everything else, all the overhead that we add to it, and everything that we do to limit it.
All right. Number 4 is national security. These are things that the voters care about. Number 4, national security.
Stop looking for wars all around the world. I mean, a completely night and day change in the U.S. foreign policy of no longer pursuing war, but instead or pursuing U.S. global hegemony, but pursuing peace, accepting who's going to be in charge of other countries, and just dealing with them, trading with them. And obviously, and as part of that, also reining in the budget, what is spent on defense, as they say. Excuse me, and bringing the troops home. To quote one of my favorite things from Ron Paul when he was asked about, getting out of one of these things, said, "Just come home." So just come home.
Yep. There we go. Number 5 is climate change. And, I saw climate change at number 5, and I was like, there's no way that's number 5. And then I looked at the bottom, and it says that this poll was conducted out of Long Island University. So there may be some bias in this poll. But go ahead.
So I'll actually, for climate change, I'll just go back to the last answer. The U.S. military is a bigger polluter than like 140 or like 190 entire countries. If it were a country unto itself, it would be one of the top 50 polluters, because you spend a lot of fuel patrolling a really big beat when you're the policeman of the world. So that's one thing. I think also the recognition that just like that, a massive amount of the pollution comes from government entities, a lot of government owned or state owned, not necessarily American, but state owned energy companies that are the biggest polluters in the world. So again, stop contributing to the problem. And that's the first big thing. We certainly shouldn't be contributing to the problem, having government contribute to the problem in such a level, and then turning around and asking people, individuals, to then make these big sacrifices and to give up this, that, or the other thing for a problem that the government is actively contributing to. 85 car motorcades like Biden had when he was off at some climate change thing in Europe. It's absolutely insane.
All right. Number 6 is immigration. You going to open the borders, Dennis? You going to go, or are you going to close them? What are you doing?
It would sound more like opening them, but it's basically, you really got to trash the system. If you look at the system we have now, nobody's happy with it, and it is a complete mess. Between having, certainly more than 10 million people who are here undocumented outside of the system, circumventing it. At the same time, you've got basically concentration camps that we've had with immigrants, or at least internment camps, whatever you want to call them, that have been going on the Obama years. It's a mess, and people waiting years and years to be able to enter into the country. You need to scrap the system that has, visas and stuff based on nations and everything. Get back to something similar that actually works for the United States, where people want to be here. If someone is not a criminal, not a violent criminal, allow them to come in. If they want to come in and work, let them come in and work. You need to treat people as individuals. We as libertarians, we believe in treating people as individuals. Immigration system should do that. The path of least resistance should not be to sneak over the border and do this thing. The path of least resistance should be to come in, document yourself, and just go and work. Because what do we have against somebody coming in and working? Some people do, but I don't. And if you want to get control over what's happening, I think that's the path. Which will sound a lot like open borders to a lot of people, but I'm willing to concede at least that you want to have people coming in through a legal channel and being documented and having a process, similar to like an Ellis Island kind of process, but at whatever sort of port of entry or through the roads or whatever on the border.
All right. Number 7 is racial and gender equality.
I think that some certain aspects of it are misunderstood in terms of what are the factors, but again, I think this is one of those things where you just stop contributing to the problems. I think the over-criminalization of nonviolent behaviors, like some of the things we talked about earlier, contributes to over-policing in poor communities where people because people do these things in both poor and rich communities, but the people in rich communities have the resources to protect themselves in the sense of they can defend against the legal case and everything. So what do the police respond to that doing? They do it by, what's the word I'm looking for? They focus on these communities that are sort of the lower hanging fruit, the easier ones to go after. And we get this real big disparity in policing and just the human experience and a negative adversarial relationship between police and the communities they serve. And that tends to fall a lot along racial lines. And that's where you have, I think, real disparities in terms of how people are treated. But it really all goes in government-run areas. If you think about where also do you see big disparities, you think about the school systems in rich or predominantly white areas versus poorer and predominantly black areas, we see a disparity. So, but it's all in areas where the government is most involved. And so we want to limit that wherever we can and certainly draw back from some of those things. Public schools is something where we would like to dial back, certainly, but also in the policing. We don't want to be policing every aspect of people's lives that creates these situations.
Yeah. All right. We're almost done. It might have felt like an eternity, but we're almost there. Number 8, Supreme Court.
To me, it's real simple. I would expect, if I'm going to vote for anyone to be confirmed to it, that they actually have a recognition of what the source of government power is, which is the people itself, and they cannot invest in government power they don't have, like as controlling other people's lives and seizing their property and so forth. So it really would have to do with their adherence to the principles of individual liberty, which I think there may not be that much of that, but you never know. I did
All
like,
right,
but I was
yeah. Go ahead. No, you're fine. You can say what you want to say.
I was gonna say with there was a question against I'm trying to remember the most recently Jackson, yes, where I guess in a case where she was defending someone she had referred to or charged and claimed that Bush and Donald Rumsfeld were war criminals, and unfortunately she didn't double down on that when she was questioned about it. But if she had, she would have probably done a little more to earn my vote.
There we go. Number 9. See, this is why I think this poll is wrong, because number 9 is education.
That's not Florida, so
Yeah.
look, it's funny because I'm a guy who I'm a product of public schooling, K through 12, and I taught actually in public schools for a few years myself, even, and went to a public university. So I'm sympathetic to it a little more, but I think a lot of the problems that we're seeing right now are driven by the fact that we have government-run education with a one-size-fits-all. Ideally, the money should go to provide for the students to be able to get educated wherever they want. All of the schools should be run independently, privately, if they want to organize separately, but it shouldn't be through the government. And you shouldn't have, state boards and things like that, or governors and legislatures deciding what the content being taught in the schools is, one way or the other. And parents should have the right to choose what school their kids are going to go to. It seems like a no-brainer to me, especially as a parent.
Yeah. And the last one here, you kind of answered it a little bit with the national security question, but it's foreign policy.
I think that one was earlier, but yeah, man, foreign policy. Just come home. Let's get out of this stuff. We're already over time.
Yeah.
No, we're good. There's no time limits here, and we get drunk all night. So, Dennis,
Tim will hold us hostage if he has to.
Hey,
Yeah,
man,
he
it's
will.
easy to do. It's easy to do. You guys
We're
are
like
weak.
the Uyghurs. We're like the Uyghurs.
No, man. Hey, Dennis, I want to thank you for coming on, man. It was great to have you in the swamp, and always good to see you when I do get to see you.
Likewise.
I'm gonna let everybody else jump in with your thanks and plugs and all that.
Thanks, Dennis. Running as a libertarian on the level that you're running, man, it takes a lot of guts to put yourself out there in this day and age when anyone can put anything about you up on the internet. So it takes that, and you're doing it on our side. So we need more candidates. That's what we need.
Thank you, man.
Agreed.
plugs.
Yeah, go.
I'm not plugging anything for a while. This is probably going to be my last podcast for a while. I'll talk to the Swamp guys after this. So I wanted to get on here and have a good night with you guys. But I will be back. Mark my words on that.
Rob is going to go on a great journey into the swamp, into the depths, and we will hear all about it when he returns. But in the meantime, go check out @MitchConnorJLo on Twitter. And also go check out...
Hey everyone, let me take a minute out of your time to tell you about a company I love, and that is
I'm sorry.
You know, I was about to plug that. Like, could you not? Like Tim, like legit, could you not? Like, I was literally about to plug that. Like,
I did it for you.
I know. I mean, no. Like, you know what? Fuck it. Yeah, I'm taking away your toys. You can't have fun anymore, Tim.
You're no fun, Mitch. This is why you're Mitch the bitch.
This is why this is a dictatorship, and I'm the dick.
Yeah.
But
That's about
And
where
it's
you are.
small.
anyways, go check out 1776 Swag, where currently there is no tax and there is completely free shipping throughout the website as part of the Road to Reno Reset, and also as the pre-recorded ad for Culture and Decay is. There's go check out Trip Cannabinoids and use code word Mitch at checkout for 10% off. So, anyways, Rich, what do you got to plug, buddy?
They got some good shit on there. I got to try some of that shit at CannaFest. But just there we go, right there. Right there. Maybe Rich or Rome will follow me on Twitter. That's all I got.
Made it easy. Yep.
Right. Well, Dennis, want to thank you for coming on, joining us tonight. Appreciate you running in a very big race, and hopefully we can see some success for you there. Check me out over here and check out my big dog right here. Otherwise, have a great night, and I hope everybody enjoys their Easter if you're celebrating. If you're Jewish, enjoy your Sunday.
And if you're on the AC, enjoy the EC call.
Well,
yeah,
make sure to
right.
visit the website and the Twitter handle over here, guys. So other than that, I'm gonna.
I fucked it up. I was gonna do something cool for you, and then I messed it all up. There, fuck us. There's the guest. Follow Dennis. Great.
Twitter handle, and the URL was over here. It's just my last name. There we go. So
I got it.
thank you again.
Awesome, man. We love having you on.
For all the Republicans out there that think, oh, we got to vote for Marco Rubio because if not, we're going to end up with a Democrat. Guess what? Marco Rubio's a fucking Democrat. He votes for more war. He votes for more spending, and he votes anti-gun. If you don't want that shit, vote for this fucking guy.
Dennis.
Thank you, guys.
There we go.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're wrapping